There are stories that don't just narrate events, they blow an unease into you, an almost invisible discomfort, like dust that gets in your eyes when the wind shifts. V for Vendetta is one of those stories. It's not about a hero, nor about a regime. It's about the narrow space between fear and freedom, and about what happens when we allow someone to walk that space for us. You know the film, but the graphic novel that inspired it is completely different and far darker. The Norse Fair story echoes other times, not because it copies past events, but because human nature repeats its shortcuts. They took the Nazi Germany playbook, adapted it for England, and it worked. Why? Because when people are afraid, they don't want complex solutions. They want someone who'll point at a culprit and promise protection. Immigrants, homosexuals, dissidents, doesn't matter who the target is. What matters is that there's a them to hate together. Because hating together creates a comforting illusion of belonging. It's a false union, built on emptiness. But as long as we're pointing fingers outward, we don't have to look inward. And here's the most perverse trick. Every time we surrender freedom in exchange for security, we create the need to surrender more. Fear feeds on itself. First it's just the immigrants, then just the homosexuals, until you realize the categories have expanded. And you're inside. Crisis creates monsters, but it also creates false saviors. And the people, starving for stability, accept any firm hand that promises silence, until the silence becomes too sepulchral, and we realize we were the ones who locked the door from the inside. Among the most disturbing elements of the comic is fate, the supercomputer that transforms into an entity. Not by magic, by convenience. It's comfortable to believe that responsibility lives elsewhere, that someone or something is deciding for us. Subtler governs, but it's fate that absolves. If fate decides, nobody needs to carry the moral weight of atrocities. It wasn't me, it was the system. Just following orders. That's how things work. How many times have we heard these lines? The state organizes itself like a body, but a corrupt, feverish body, watching itself in paranoia. The mouth speaks what must be said. The eyes watch what must not be seen. The ear listens to what shouldn't exist. The nose sniffs out dissent. The finger pulls the triggers that keep the peace. Louis Prothero, the mouth of the regime, transforms algorithms into divine commandments. And the people accept it because it's easier to believe there's a greater plan than to admit we're all improvising while trampling each other. The uncomfortable truth? We don't need supercomputers for this. We've been doing it for millennia, with kings, popes, Führer, the market, the will of the people. Anything works, as long as it takes the responsibility away. Moore places the arts under the domain of the mouth, the propaganda machine, the stupid humor, the patriotic fiction, the news that drips fear regularly. Everything composes a planned menu to anesthetize. Gradually, the grotesque becomes normal. The absurd becomes habit. Storm Saxon, blonde hero fighting cannibal barbarians, isn't just entertainment. It's pedagogy of hatred. It teaches without seeming to teach who deserves respect and who deserves contempt. Brenda, the sexualized and idiotic character from Yugoslav, teaches that women are decorative objects. And the news, always apocalyptic, teaches that the world out there is constant danger. The mouth doesn't need to lie blatantly. It's enough to choose which truths to show, in what order, with what tone of voice. Fear and prejudice stop being political constructions and start seeming like natural facts of existence. Moore realized this decades ago. And today, we live surrounded by storm Saxons. Narratives that tell us who's hero and who's villain, always simplifying, always pointing away from the real problems. At center stage, V emerges, a man without a name, a wound dressed in poetry. He's Sutler's inverted mirror. Where one sees order, the other sees shackles. Where one sees stability, the other sees prison. But V isn't a saint, isn't a martyr, isn't a hero. He's the kind of man who burns his own house down to light the way for others. V is anarchist because he refuses all hierarchies. But his absolute refusal makes him, himself, hierarchical in his decisions. He decides who deserves to live, who deserves to die, what Eve must learn, when she must suffer, when she must be freed. Moore insists on this ambivalence. He wants the reader uncomfortable, wants to show that even the idea of freedom can become a prison when someone tries to deliver it ready-made. V doesn't just act. He performs. Every gesture is choreographed, every line is declaimed, every appearance is staged, as if the world were a stage. And he? The only actor who understands he's in a play. When he blows up Old Bailey, destroying the building isn't enough. He conducts an invisible orchestra while Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture echoes over London. Fireworks replace bombs. Destruction becomes spectacle. Terrorism becomes art. Why? Because V understands something fundamental. Symbols die when they're forgotten, not when they're destroyed. An exploding building is news. An exploding building to the sound of classical music, while the sky paints itself red is myth. It's an image that sticks in the collective retina. The shadow gallery is filled with Shakespearean references. V quotes Macbeth, Hamlet, Richard III. Shakespeare wrote about power, betrayal, tyranny, but always through characters wearing social masks. V takes this to the extreme. His mask doesn't hide who he is. It replaces him completely. Fascism hates art, because art is ambiguity. It's complexity. It's a question without a ready answer. V preserves forbidden films, censored paintings, burned books, because he understands that art is the last form of resistance when everything else fails. The Shadow Gallery isn't just a hideout, it's a reliquary. It's the last refuge of forbidden culture. V preserved everything the regime wanted destroyed. Every object is an act of resistance. Every saved film is a middle finger to Northfire. At the center of the gallery, there's a sacred space, Valerie Page's memorial. As we've seen in previous videos, Valerie represents humanist resistance, the refusal to lie about who she was, even facing death. V carried her memory for 20 years, not as a weapon, but as a reminder that humanity still exists beneath the mask. V blows up everything, Old Bailey, Jordan Tower, eventually Parliament, but not the gallery, because he understands that revolution needs memory. Destroying the old isn't enough. You must preserve fragments of what came before. The gallery survives as a promise. Authoritarianism is temporary. Art is eternal. Delia's death scene is one of the deepest because it places us before an impossible question. Is there redemption for certain things? She participated in the Larkhill experiments, saw people destroyed, and then dedicated her life to doing good, to compensating. But when V appears, she doesn't run. She accepts, because she knows some things can't be compensated. Moore doesn't give us easy answers. Delia is human, complex, capable of change. But is it enough? V says no. Among all of V's encounters, the most moving is with Delia. She, who participated in horror, dedicated the rest of her life trying to stitch wounds that couldn't heal. V kills her, and she accepts it like someone accepting winter after living an entire autumn in guilt. Eric Finch starts as a loyal servant of the system. He ends as a man who's seen too much to go back. Finch isn't a villain, isn't a hero. He's a competent civil servant doing his job. He believes in the system because he never had reason to question it. Until he did. V's investigation leads him to Larkhill, to the archives, to the photos, to the medical records, and then to the truth. The St. Mary virus, that killed thousands, that justified all of Norsefire's power, was created by the government itself. False flag bioterrorism. His country wasn't attacked. It was sacrificed. His wife didn't die because of terrorists. She died because his own government killed her to consolidate power. Finch takes LSD and goes to Larkhill. He hallucinates, sees ghosts, sees horrors, but he also sees clarity. The system he served is a monster, and he was a tooth of that monster. When he confronts V in the tube, Finch has the gun, has the shot, could stop everything. But he hesitates, because he's no longer sure what's right. V dies anyway, from Creedy's bullets, not Finch's. But Finch's hesitation says everything. He no longer serves the system. He can't anymore. In the end, Helen Heyer offers power to Finch. She wants to rebuild Norsefire, needs a competent, respected man. Finch would be perfect. He refuses. She asks, "Where are you going?" Finch answers, "Down a very long, very dark road." That line is more honest than any revolutionary manifesto. Finch won't lead a revolution, won't found a new government, won't write a constitution. He'll walk alone, in darkness, not knowing where he's going, no leader, no map, no guarantees. Because he understood that real freedom doesn't come with a manual. It comes with the individual choice to refuse all saviors, including himself as savior. Finch represents all of us when we wake up, when we realize we serve a rotten system. The question isn't what to do after. The question is, do you have the courage to walk in darkness without seeking a new light to follow? Most don't. They trade one leader for another, one system for another, one certainty for another. Finch chooses darkness, chooses doubt, chooses to walk without knowing. And in that, paradoxically, he finds the only form of freedom that survives, the one that depends on nobody but himself. Finch chooses to walk alone, but V's story doesn't end with his death. It only begins to multiply, because V wasn't just a man with a mask. He was an idea, and ideas, as he himself said, are bulletproof. But they're also author-proof,